In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the original lever gym, aka the Workbench Lever Gym put out by Powertec, and then compare it to the much cheaper option that I reviewed before, the GMWD Lever Gym. So it's going to be somewhat of a battle of the lever gyms, and as a side note, I actually did review the QT Pro 2 that's looking at me right here. So in a future video, if you guys want to see that, most likely I will compare that machine as well to a lever gym because it kind of fits in the same category. But needless to say, for me personally, I do not need all these machines, so something here is going to have to go. By the end of this video, you guys might see my potential pick, but certainly want to hear your comments down below in the description box as well. Now, even though the Powertec is the more established brand, I will say right up front that there are definitely some pros and cons to each machine. This thing did not blow out the GMWD out of the water, which I kind of thought it would, being that again, it was the established brand. I'll actually assume, now that I have both machines, that this company definitely either got a hold of a Powertec, but in some way, shape, or form tried to strategically place itself on the shortcomings of the Powertec in the way it's designed and of course, the way it's competitively priced. As always guys, this is gonna be an unsponsored video, gonna give you guys my honest thoughts on it. If you do wanna pick up any one of these machines and also help support me in the channel through one of those affiliate links, I will drop them down in the description box. Greatly help support me and the channel, especially if you guys wanna see more unbiased, honest reviews in the future. And then before we get going guys, I'm gonna really focus a little bit more on the Powertec features. Certainly I'll be comparing both machines, but if you wanna see more specifics about this GMWD, I will link this review also down below in the description box. I'm briefly going to touch on the price difference first because this really is going to help set the stage in some of these comparisons we're going to get into when you consider the big price difference. If you go to powertec.com, you see there's a sale going on right now at the time of this recording. You get the machine that has the bench included for generally, if there's not a sale, it's like $1,500. Right now, I think it's like $1,400 with free shipping. Again, comes with a bench. Compared to Amazon, the GMWD is $699 for just the unit itself, but if you did go ahead and include a bench, it jumps up to $999. From what I'm seeing, the Powertec Lever Gym does not have an option without the bench, and that's probably because they really want you to kind of buy into the whole workbench system because there's many accessories, really great accessories I should add, that go along with the bench that does come included with this. But still, all things considered, even if you did include, say, a bench with the GMWD, it's a pretty decent price jump of like $400 to $500, depending if there's a sale going on into the Powertec. Now, I really want to highlight these dimensions. So if you look at the GMWD, just check out the base and the distance there compared to this Powertec, which is much smaller. If you actually look at the dimensions that are listed, they have the length here at around, I believe it's 55 inches on the website from this distance to here. From Amazon, Powertec lists theirs like 81 point something, but I think you can see that is obviously not the same thing. I think they're really counting the distance of the lever arms when they're kind of put down right there. So that's just something to kind of consider. And then the width of the GMWD is 60 inches from here to here in that base, and then the Powertec is actually 57.5 inches, so just a little bit tighter right there. Take notice, since we kind of got it here, the band peg positioning, both of them have band pegs, just a little bit different placement. You do have these little kind of struts here in the middle that do serve, I guess, a little purpose with the bench, otherwise not a giant deal, honestly. And then the height is about the same. The GMWD is 81 inches in height. This is 81.7, so it's a little bit taller up top. And this is not something I explicitly really measure, but I did notice when you compare the actual arms back to back, you do feel a little further away from the machine. And I believe the arms themselves are a little bit heavier, probably maybe because of this distance. I think each arm is rated at 12 pounds each. Powertec Lever Gyms, I think is about 10 pounds for each arm. But you definitely feel a little bit tighter to the Powertec than you do to the GMWD. Assembly for the Powertec, I will just say, was not fun. It wasn't unbearable. It was, pretty self-explanatory in the manual. However, there was a lot more little bolts and some cumbersome features to assemble this one compared to the GMWD. That thing had like more an exploded view. You kind of guess where to put things. The advantage of this, and I think they did take a note out of this assembly, is that most of the things had very similar, if not all the same bolts. So you can kind of pretty much figure it out pretty simplistically. It was kind of a little bit of a puzzle when you're actually looking at the exploded view. This one was more straightforward in its kind of sequential order of the manual, but a lot more different size bolts and nuts, and like I said, some cumbersome features in just the general assembly. Both though, I would say it took equally as much time. Maybe this one took a little less time, to be honest. The attachments you get with the Powertec are fairly close with the GMWD that comes with it. They give you a lat pull down, which I actually do like better compared to that one. I just like the kind of the coating, the way it kind of feels in your hand. They give you guys a curl or press down bar that does rotate compared to the GMWDs, which does not. Give you a fairly kind of cheap chain, very similar to the GMWD. They give you a single kind of handle, rotating handle, feels good in your hand. This does not come with that machine. GMWD, of course, has their own squat bar, but Lever Gyms I actually like a little bit better. It kind of feels thicker. I trust this thing more, a little bit simpler design. I mentioned in my first video, this thing I seem to kind of snapped off. Don't know if it was GMWD's fault. Or I just saw one of their previous videos, they had a model or a person doing something that I tried that caused me to kind of like snap the thing doing these back extensions. Again, I was probably 60 pounds heavier than that other person I saw in the video, but that's kind of an issue. This one just seems a little more substantial. I just like the way this is designed. It just feels heavier in your hands. So this would be one difference, the primary attachment that, put that on wrong, that compared to the GMWD, I say is a standout feature. You can see how it's a little nice and snug to get on, which I like, and pretty much it. So I think I trust this squat bar more so than this one. It still works, even though it kind of torqued it a little bit, but I think this one's a little more substantial. And then the GMWD does come with a tricep rope. Would be nice if they had one in there too, but not a huge game changer thing. And then there is, of course, the workbench that is really, I would say, kind of the heart of the Powertec system, because there's a lot of stuff that really goes and is integrated with that. Some really cool attachments. It's very versatile in the fact that you can move up and down. And you'll notice here a big selling point, I'm kind of lumping it here with the attachments, but I'll probably come back to it again. The difference is this little notch down here where you actually can insert the bench to really lock it in. And that's a big plus for me, because on the GMWD, it's just not a big deal, but you gotta kind of fine tune your bench to fit kind of just right. This thing is definitely integrated for this. So when it gets to areas here, like locking in your feet or your knees, for doing things like lat pull downs, you know that the bench is more or less designed for that. And the fact that you can really fine tune the positioning because of the way the Powertec bench adjusts kind of forward and back, not to mention all the different settings for the seat and also the incline decline features. All right, now I just want to get into some of the major differences, and they're kind of subtle because these machines are so similar in dimensions and basic functions. This might help you guys make the best decision, because like I said at the start, there's not really a clear-cut opening case winner in my opinion, but some of these things might be maybe deal breakers for you guys. I'll start with the big stuff and then I'll get a little closer into the machines. First and foremost is, let's just talk about the quality. When I was unboxing this, I forgot to mention this as we were kind of getting into the unboxing section, but the powder coating and the way kind of the thickness of the machine feels as I was unboxing it was definitely apparent. In fact, that was kind of my first impressions, was that this thing is just going to be better because of the way this felt. Again, I just like the powder coating. You can get this in black too. I think the yellow is currently sold out and not the black on the website. These handles are very similar in function. The GMWD is a little bit thicker. These are thinner, feel just a little bit more polished in my hand. It could just be personal preference. It probably is. I like the way these kind of feel in my hand. Functional differences in the lever mechanism. I didn't go over the basic function. I think most of you guys are somewhat familiar with it or get the idea from watching the video. But you can go single arm with these. I think in old previous Powertecs you couldn't until recently. You can actually, now you can go double or single arm. There are some companies like Body Solid, which is still just a fixed unit. So I would say that's an advantage between these two things, is that you actually can go single arm if you like to. 9 times out of 10 though, I will just leave them both connected. That's just my personal preference there. Now, a distinctive difference that might be a game breaker for one of you guys, depending on your personal preferences and needs, is gonna be right in this area right here compared to these two machines. Notice the Powertec has a few more holes here, so you can really fine tune that setting. The other thing that's pretty big, I think I've said this already, but I will probably say it a few more times, you are closer to the machine in the Powertec, which I do kind of prefer in just the overall feel and how I like doing various exercises. But the greater advantage is that now, even for things like, say, unracking a squat rack or whatever, if you just want to rack or pin it on the fly, you actually unrack it and still grab this pin, do the reps, and say, especially if there's a squat rack on you, go ahead and rack that weight. You can't really do that on here. It's just, you're just too far away from that distance. That function might not fit with everybody's dimensions, but I think for most people, they'll still be able to pull that off. Now that sounds all good compared to the GMWD, but the big difference that came out to me right away that I was kind of surprised at initially, that I'm sure GMWD looked at Powertec and saw a weakness and tried to exploit it, is that I can't go that high, at least nothing that I'm aware of, to really lock this in to say do pull-ups. I guess you could kind of do, you know, some pull-ups here. That doesn't really count, but yeah, you can't lock it up at full lockout. And for the GMWD, I take advantage of this a lot just to get it out of the way 9 times out of 10. I actually could pull these pins back, rest them against the wall. I just don't prefer to do that. But you can see this thing is gonna kind of always be in your way. I can put this down below and do something like that. You know, that's fine, it's kind of out of your way. But I really like that function of having this up high because you guys probably know with various weight equipment, you know, banging your head on different collars and stuff like that isn't the most fun. I guess you could, I didn't try it, I guess you could do pull-ups up here with this down there as a possibility. Something I said, I think in a follow-up video, is this little crease down here in the Powertec has the same problem that the GMWD has. I mentioned before that this thing kind of likes to move. See that rocking back and forth? Doesn't matter how much you crack down on these bolts, you're gonna get a little bit of movement if you can kind of see that. And I definitely don't like that. Not really a big deal, more so if you're doing things like dips and pull-ups, you start to notice it. I just wish this was basically not doing that. Some sort of solid connector point in that crease would be ideal. I'm also gonna have you guys notice this cable. Notice I can't fully extend my elbow with that thing kind of getting locked out. GMWD, I got some play to do that with the way theirs is kind of set up. Another huge difference, something I noticed right away when I first started using it, and I thought it was just my garage being a little off center, and I'll talk about the bottom base here in a second and why it wobbles. But aside from that, this thing is really easy to kind of pull down if you really wanted to. You feel this, you feel that play versus the GMWD. If I do some stuff here, there's not really, there's more weight in that thing as you guys can see compared to the GMWD right now. And I can't pull that thing down. That thing feels very solid. This thing, on the other hand, not so solid. So now I want to show you guys why it's not so solid. Of course, it's not as far back of a base compared to the GMWD. We talked about that in the dimensions. The other big thing though is notice the GMWD comes with these little rubber feet to keep it from wobbling. That's something I noticed right away. You can see I'm just using one hand here, and I can really rattle that thing back and forth. I thought it was maybe just the slope of my garage, but even if I put a stall mat underneath this, I tried it out first, it was still doing it. Talked to Lever Gym, and they have a solution for it, but you have to pay for it. So I do not like that at all. This, there's an add-on feature where you can put these little feet on the ends to stop it from doing this. Not a game breaker, I'm sure you get used to it, but when you compare these two machines, that is something that I definitely noticed. And then since we're down here, you can see some other features. I will actually just point out, since these are looking at me, I do actually like these little clamps that Powertec gives you for their weights. But this is where you detach the weight bench, which I do like the way that kind of sits in there. But something I noticed right away, cable's a little bit higher compared to the GMWD, but something I noticed here is that they give you this little footrest that is included so you can do things like seated rows. And when I asked about that and didn't know that, this is another add-on you have to pay for on their machine. Again, I'm pointing to GMWD, they probably notified this, they probably noticed this and just try to exploit it into their product where you do not have to pay into that. Of course, the big thing is you can't have any kind of specialized bench that goes on here so you're locked in, so that's kind of a slight trade-off, but that's something you have to pay for. You could do something, which I did do, you could do seated rows and just put your feet braced against there. That is doable, more or less. And then moving on here, hopefully you guys noticed this. This was kind of glaring to me right away. I thought this was something, I just missed something in shipping, but they do not include stock loaders or 2-inch loaders to go on here. This is just kind of a blanket little seat here to kind of put the weights. I think that is also an additional add-on, or you have to buy your own loaders. I have extra loaders. They're just a little too long for this, so it's kind of a little awkward the way they look. So I don't know if I'll keep that or not. Compared to the GMWD, not only do they give you loaders, these loaders are very substantial. I didn't really know the quality over time, but comparing this to other loaders that I have, I really like how beefy these are. I mean, you can compare these to what Powertec's giving you right here. Not bad, but this is just kind of light use, and you can already see what's happening there versus this just, you know, hopefully it's a little more apparent. It's definitely scuffed up, but just feels a little more kind of harder, kind of steel. And then moving on over here, they both have this little knee rest pad. GMWD, I noticed I was already starting to kind of torque it a little bit, maybe with my excess force, just doing pull downs. I put a lot of weight on there, bracing myself here. It seemed like this maybe got bent a little bit when I use it, so that's something I did notice here. Something else, GMWD gives you some little racks to put, which is very useful actually, to put some attachments, and you do not have that over here. I think this knee rest, a little bit more substantial on this thing. Also, I think the padding is definitely better on the Powertec compared to the GMWD. And then I've alluded to this throughout the video, but I think it's worth having a own segment here talking about what I found were the major differences between the two machines and where it really counts, and just the practical function and feel of the various exercises. And I think I have a decent handle on things because I was using this GMWD a lot, especially in recent months. If you guys have been watching the channel, I've been having a lot of fun with these things and some staple exercises. So I pretty much wanted to replicate some of those on here. So it was pretty easy for me to notice, even though they were extremely similar, what the difference was between the core exercises. Sounding like a broken record at this point, but the biggest difference you notice between the two machines is this kind of tighter feel between you and the unit. I can't say it's a gigantic difference, but I would say it's a subtle difference that to me it does feel a little better being closer to the machine for things like Viking presses. There's things like seated military presses that I did on here. Not to mention, this is I think where the big element comes in, is the Powertec's workbench, the actual bench itself, because of the fact you can adjust it and it's designed for this thing, that you can get into specific positions that are really advantageous. That on here, I'm pretty much just limited to whatever I got with the bench I have and the position I'm in, especially when you consider the anchor point for, say, your knees for a lat pull down. Here, you can pretty much fine tune that position to really suit your needs. I noticed even on this one, I can fully extend my elbows when I'm doing a lat pull down, which is on here. I feel like I was kind of stopping short when I was using the Bells of Steel buzzsaw, which some of you guys noticed. I actually got rid of the buzzsaw. Great bench as a side tangent, but I knew I had all these other things, other leg curl things coming in. So for the sake of time, wanting a smaller, more portable bench, the Powertec's actually sufficing great so far. And even though the plate is not here for the seated row, I don't really use it that much on the GMWD. For things like squats, I did some banded squats on here, even lunges, they feel very comparable. Again, I like the tight fit. What I do not like, this you could probably say throughout all these things, you get kind of used to it, is that kind of slight wobble. That was something I forgot to mention, and the difference is actually, notice this little, I notice this a lot more when I'm kind of doing various exercises, this little wobble between the bars. It has it over here too, but this just feels a little bit locked together as a unit versus on here, maybe because the unit was uneven, I noticed that this kind of likes to float on you and has a little bit more movement. So pretty subtle thing, you probably get used to it. I would say overall, in kind of wrapping up this segment, I think if I'm jumping on one as far as exercises and what feels the best, especially when you're considering the integrated bench that comes with it, I think the Powertec wins out ever so slightly in that regard, but it is still kind of hard to say because they are still so similar in dimensions. And again, I think that's by design from GMWD. So with all that being said, as I'm talking to you guys like a friend, if I'm trying to recommend which machine would be best for you, it is hard, but I have to say it comes down to really, I'd say one of two things. First and foremost, do you want to be integrated into the kind of Powertec system and taking advantage of their bench and the attachments? That's kind of a big thing personally. I'll be honest, it's not the best thing in the world, but there's something with the Powertec branding and even the bright yellow colors, I kind of like that. Especially from a content creator side, talking about the different attachments is very enticing. Honestly, to actually being into this kind of ecosystem of products to kind of get into. So that I definitely appreciate. Also knowing a lot of you guys have Powertec as a brand and companies to talk about equipment. But if you're looking for something that pretty much does everything this machine can do, minus the unique bench and attachments. And if you're not looking for that, you just want a really good lever gym. And if it goes without saying, I pretty much do love a lever gym. This would be in my top 5 for sure staples of home gym equipment. One that is not talked about enough, one of those underrated products, especially in the garage gym review circles. I don't know why, but it's a staple, I think, in most people's ecosystems in garage and home gym space, that I think everybody should have a lever gym if you can fit it into the space. That you can't really beat the price and the function and what this does, especially assuming that it's so much more cheaper, but also it includes a lot of the bells and whistles that I wish Powertec should just update and include in that price. When you're paying $400, $500+ over this unit, of course you're getting into their bench and all the stuff that has with it. I really do think they need to include those little quality of life features that just should be there, such as the stoppers at the bottom or the foot pads at the bottom. Definitely the loaders there. I'm not sure what they were thinking with that. That was kind of off to me. Might just be the way they're kind of doing things recently. Those are kind of my big suggestions. If you like the Powertec name, you want to get into the bench in their system, this would be the investment to kind of go with you for you. If you're looking just to get your way into a basic lever gym, save yourself a lot of money, get all the features you can get out of this thing, then I would definitely say go with the GMWD. That is it though, guys. Really motivated to get this video out there because a lot of you guys were asking questions about this thing, and because I want to get one of these things out of here, not to mention the QT Pro, which is looking at me over here, does very similar functions. Stay tuned for that video. Let me know your thoughts. Which one do you think won out in the end? Drop your comments down below, especially if you are a long-term Powertec user. I know there's a lot of you guys out there, and I'll see you on the next video. Check the promo codes, links down below. Help support me in the channel if you want to pick one of these things up. Shameless plug. Thanks again.